Hey folks, I'm Allison. Welcome to my booktube channel. I'm literally so sunburned today. Please be smarter than me and reapply your sunscreen every couple of hours. But today's video, we are going to judge celebrities' taste in books based on the Dior Book Tote Club. I really liked this little series Dior did because A, the videos are super short, and B, the people they picked seem like they're actually really into books. They picked good books, and I felt like I actually had things to say about their taste in books. The first thing I want to say though is please do not buy this weird overpriced bag. Just get literally any bag. Get like a free tote bag from any organization that is dying to give you a free tote bag.
Welcome to my Dior Book Tote Club. Susan Sontag's On Photography is still the most compelling thing I've read about how we consume images, how we look at things, how we look at art.
Susan Sontag is somebody that I really want to read. I have a copy of The Volcano Lover on my TBR, and maybe 2 years ago I started it and got like 20 pages in and frankly felt confused and overwhelmed and stopped reading it and have not picked it back up. But this is motivating me to want to put The Volcano Lover back on my TBR and actually try to make some more progress.
This is the first in the 4 Neapolitan novels by Elena Ferrante. It reminded me of like reading in my childhood because I just could not put them down. I was just reading and reading voraciously. It's the story of a friendship between these two girls and into their womanhood, and they're just the most alive characters, and it's the most true portrait of female friendship I've ever read, and then also of womanhood and all its complexity and challenges. And
okay, y'all, I have such mixed feelings about Elena Ferrante. I have read The Lost Child and My Brilliant Friend. The Lost Child I thought was fine. I liked it as a standalone novella. I thought the way that she created atmosphere was really amazing, and the moral ambiguity and gray area in which her characters lived and carried out their stories was really amazing. I love a character-driven novel, and obviously all of her novels, at least these two that I've read, but I think that basically all of her novels are incredibly character-driven, and the characters are so complicated. They have such darkness in them, but also are so compelling, and you have so much compassion for them and what they're going through, even while you are sort of aware that they are often at fault for the situations that are being created, or they are unreliable narrators. And I really love that. I just think it's so human and saturated. But I found The Lost Child a bit, I felt like it didn't quite know where it was going. The way the relationship between the protagonist and the family at the beach was amazing. The relationship between the protagonist and her past and her family, and the sort of the way that she exits the story and the way that the sort of ambiguous way that it ends fell a little flat for me. And I felt a little bit, I know everyone loves My Brilliant Friend, and I know this is like a hot take, but I liked it, but I didn't love it. It partially because it was just too sort of sad and unrelenting, partially because I found the narrator so unlikable and so obtuse. It's just she is famously an unreliable narrator, but also just seemed so unaware of everything that was happening around her, and that was just really frustrating to me. It was certainly a novel that stuck with me, and I recognize that the skill to be able to write something that people will read and then keep actually thinking about and coming back to is an incredible skill and is the mark often of a really great work of literature. But it was just so frustrating. It was like I read the first book and then I just am not gonna keep reading the series. The thing about it was, I guess, that books can sort of move you and entertain you, I suppose. And for me, the really best books that I love are the ones that do both. And this book was incredibly moving, but it it didn't really entertain me. Like I didn't love the experience of reading it. And when I got to the end of it, I didn't want to keep going. And again, I know that is an unpopular opinion, but as a result, I'm a little medium on Elena Ferrante.
Well, Rebecca Solnit is one of my favorite essayists. She writes about everything from feminist topics to the environment, and this is a book completely dedicated to hope, which I think is so inspiring. She argues that change is possible. She does note the changes and the incredible movements that activists have brought to the forefront, like Me Too, that have already made an impact and that there's possibility for more.
Okay, this book is going on my TBR immediately. I've never read anything by Rebecca Solnit, and at least the way that Natalie Portman describes her, she sounds amazing. I'm not usually that big into nonfiction generally, books of essays, that kind of thing, but essays on hope right now in this moment seems like maybe something that I need in my life. So I am going to be, as soon as I'm done finishing this video, going and looking into Hope in the Dark by Rebecca Solnit. The next video is Rosamund Pike, who I also love. That's the other thing. I feel like Natalie Portman is such a great actress and she's so funny and so thoughtful. And Rosamund Pike also seems like someone who is just a very thoughtful person. And I also like that they picked people who aren't that young, people who've had enough time in life to have read a bunch of books and actually have thought about them and lived with them and sat with them for a long time and have opinions developed over a lifetime. So yes, so I'm excited to see what Rosamund Pike has to say as well.
This is Jack Kerouac's On the Road. I was on a road trip with my father and we went to the west coast of Scotland, which is remote and wild, and the house that we were staying in had a very interesting collection, small collection of books, and one of them was this one.
My toxic trait is I have zero interest in reading On the Road by Jack Kerouac. I know that it is a great American novel, masterpiece, cultural touchstone, what have you, but it just doesn't sound interesting to me at all.
Here's my second book. I wanted to talk about Slouching towards Bethlehem, which is a collection of essays by Joan Didion, who's one of the most concise, pertinent observers of people. One of the essays in this collection that I love is her essay on self-respect. It's always worth spending time with Joan Didion. She was curious, and I think curiosity is where freedom lies and interest lies.
Yes, okay. I absolutely love Joan Didion. I have read all of her works of fiction and literally loved every single one of them. I really love a very stripped down, plain writing style. I feel like people who can communicate atmosphere and emotion without having to use sort of all of this flowery language, who can do it in very spare prose, are many times my absolute favorite writers. And Joan Didion is a master at that. She's also so good at intertwining all of these different strands that you're having to pick apart, and you can read her books so many times and still discover more layers underneath that you didn't see the first time. I think, she is really one of those writers where the whole construction of the novel and the way that it ends and the way that the arc is ultimately shaped is so important to being able to understand the things that are happening in the beginning and the characters. And she is someone who is crafting character from the very beginning with a view towards the way that things are going. And you can just tell that she has spent so much care in creating all these layers to her characters at the very beginning of the story that reflect the way that things are going to go. And, there are all these little clues as you read of the direction that things are moving. I just think she's a genius, and one of those writers where you read her and it's like, oh, there's a there, it is that deep. And I just love her for that. And also the books are so good. Like, they're so entertaining. For me, at least, they're books that I read them, and while I'm reading them, I don't want to put them down. And then once I put them down, I want to pick them back up until I'm done. And they're books that I own several of her books. I keep them in my book collection, and I don't keep very many books, but I go back to them. Like, hers are books that the atmosphere is so lovely and also deranged, and the characters are so gritty and chaotic, and also everything is so finely tuned that it's just a pleasure to read, even when, maybe especially when you know how it ends. Like, these are books that get better the more times you read them, and I think that is really rare. I have only read one of her nonfiction works, and that's The Year of Magical Thinking, which she wrote much later in life than a lot of the nonfiction works of hers that are more famous, including Slouching towards Bethlehem. But she's one of the few nonfiction writers where I am actually excited to read her nonfiction works at some point, and maybe this is a good sign that I need to strike back out into the world of nonfiction and pick up another Joan Didion book.
The third book that I'm going to put in my book tote, A Little Life by Hanya Yanagahara. This is truly one of the most brilliant, devastating, magnificent novels I have ever read.
This is one that I have not read, and I go really back and forth about whether I want to read it. I have some friends who read it and loved it. One of them says to this day that book like ruined reading for her because it was so amazing and nothing can ever match it. But I don't know if I want to be that sad. I don't know if I want to be traumatized. I'm going to go ahead and say at this moment in history, I do not have the emotional capacity to be traumatized. Maybe in 10 years, I will circle back and feel like I can hold that, hold space for that. But right now, A Little Life is one of those great works that is also not on my list. That said, I do think Hanya Yanagahara's other works, the one about the trees, I can't remember what it's called off the top of my head, but that's one that I have frequently seen in bookstores and picked up and carried around with me and put back down. At some point in the future, I think I probably will pick that book up and actually make it out of the store with it, because I do want to read something that she's written.
Whenever I'm missing England, I read Thomas Hardy. That is The Mayor of Casterbridge. This is a terrible story about a man who sells his wife. It's a moment of total irrational hubris. I think I've never been interested in speed reading because I like the sound of the words. I don't want to just read for information, because I think part of the meaning is in how words work rhythmically.
Okay, I also have not read The Mayor of Casterbridge, but I have read Tess of the D'Urbervilles by Thomas Hardy, and I really liked that book. That is one of the sort of classic novels that I think is among my favorites. It's like not an easy read. It's, as with many books from that sort of time period, life is really hard on the characters, and they, every time they get back up, they get sort of knocked back down again, and it doesn't really have a happy ending. I mean, it has a sort of what probably passed for a kind of happy ending at that time, but on the relative scale of modern novels, we definitely would not think of it as a happy ending. But for literature from the sort of late 1800s, it is, I think, pretty compelling. It's no Jane Eyre, but certainly compared to like a Dickens, it moves. So I wouldn't say that The Mayor of Casterbridge is like high on my list, but I would be open to reading more Hardy at some point.
Hi everyone, welcome to my Dior Book Tote Club.
The last of these videos I'm going to react to is Pretty Yende, who I was not familiar with, but is, I have learned through Googling her, an opera singer, and that's kind of amazing. So I'm curious to see what she has to say for herself.
One of the stories that I loved the most was this story about the bear, Winnie the Pooh. It's written by A.L. Milne. It is very illustrative, very easy stories, but captivating, inspiring, warm. It's literally a honey book.
I love it when people are willing to go on a program like this and pick a book that is not like a fancy, highbrow, cultured, look how amazing I am book, that genuinely you can tell they just love this book. And Winnie the Pooh is obviously an amazing example of that. I mean, the stories are so sweet and the illustrations are so beautiful, and yeah, just mad respect for going on this show and being like Winnie the Pooh.
Oh, so one thing about me, I love watching series. And one of the series that I like so much is this one called The Midwife. So there's a book, of course. It's a true story of the East End in the 1950s. It's actually stories of live people, the hardship and community and women together. Really must read.
I didn't know Call the Midwife was based on a book. I also love that series. I don't, to be brutally honest, I don't know that I'm gonna look that book up. I kind of feel like the series really satisfied everything that I could want from it, and I don't know that I feel like I would want that a book would add anything, but that is fascinating. You learn something new every day. I think I'm gonna end this video here. I hope that you enjoyed it. If you'd like to hear more from me, please consider subscribing. And as always, thank you so much for spending some of your one wild and precious life with me watching this video.